Answering questions. Welcome to Law and Society. Today I want to answer some questions that have popped up and that I think are a quick rundown of how what I feel about these questions. So let's dive into it, shall we? Welcome. Please like, share, and subscribe. And the first question that I want to address is why law is important for society. Well, law operates as a structure for what we have come to believe in as a society. It's a collective understanding of our moral ethics, of our culture, of the norms, and what we have drawn over centuries from common law of what is societally acceptable and what is not, what is societally rewarded or allowed to happen versus what is punished. And it is important in society to have a measure, a rule, a measure by which everybody is categorized. If you are a functioning citizen of a society, you abide by the law and you don't violate the law because it is important for you as an individual to not disrupt your own life and be punished for what you're doing. It is important for the society which you are a part of to remain a tranquil and prospering society that is for the well-being of others and not at the harm of others to your benefit. And law provides this society with bounds beyond which, if you go, you no longer fall into society's rules, and therefore you must be held accountable. It is a measure of accountability that everybody needs to be subjected to if we are to live in a coherent society where there is law and order versus lawlessness and rampant crime. There is a question about the criticism of the rule of law. The rule of law is a standard, and there's always deviations from the standard. And sometimes people commit crimes without not having the mental state to be able to comprehend what they're doing. Or there may be, on the other side of the spectrum, some instances where it is impossible to get to those people because they are so rich and so powerful that they, even if they realize and they intentionally commit crimes, the rule of law can't extend their arms far enough while being deliberative and following the rule of law in order to hold these people accountable. So the rule of law has portions of society that are constantly pushing up against the bounds and stepping into areas that the law is almost unable to reach. And that is a question for eternity of how we want our society to be. If you want a totalitarian state, you have to give up all your rights. But if you want to live in a state that is based on a rule of law and order, then you have to remain within the bounds of the rule of law. There's another question about what's the difference between law and justice? Well, law is the book, law is the rule, and justice is getting the right action happen to you based on those rules. So if you have your rights, if you have been harmed and that violates a law, then you are entitled to justice based on that law. In our society, in the American society, we have the constitutional rights that are spelled out in the Bill of Rights, and then in the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments, about the rights of African American freedom of equal protection under the law against state intrusion, and then the right to vote. Then there's the 19th Amendment. These are rights of giving women the right to vote. The First Amendment, right of speech, right to freely exercise religion, right of gathering peacefully, right of peaceful protest, right of expression, right of association, right to family. Second Amendment, right against intrusion of the state or of an enemy. You have the defensive right to bear arms. You have the right to deny access to the military into your home. You have the right against unreasonable search and seizure under the Fourth Amendment. You have the right to due process of law under the Fifth Amendment. You have the right to counsel and a right to face your accuser under the Sixth Amendment. Seventh Amendment gives you the right to civil trials. Eighth Amendment prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. The Ninth Amendment it says that rights not enumerated in the Bill of Rights does not mean that those rights are not available to the people. This is the amendment that opens up the door for unwritten constitutional rights, like the right to choose whether or not to terminate your pregnancy, the right to same-sex marriage, the right to family association, the right to parental rights, any right that we consider to be fundamental to us that is unwritten flows from the substantive due process rights body of law by way of the Ninth Amendment that says that there is a penumbra, there's this ambit of rights that flow from the Bill of Rights, a general umbrella of privacy that is then vested to the people through the Ninth Amendment and 14th Amendment to the states that they have to follow, that there is an inquiry in the courts that see whether these rights fall within the ordered liberty that is part of the history and tradition of our country. And if those rights are typically vested or not vested, that forms a historical record. And you look at that and you form rights like having the right to contraceptives. It's a privacy right. Right to bodily autonomy. It's a privacy right. Right to marry is a privacy right. Right to family association is a privacy right. In its elements coming from the First, Fourth, Fifth, Sixth, Eighth Amendments through the Ninth Amendment and 14th Amendments to the people, and protection against also state discrimination, not just federal discrimination. And that is the role of law in society. It is the role of law in society to stabilize society, to have an egalitarian society where everybody is measured by a same standard that applies to you no matter how rich you are, no matter who you are. And that is the theoretical premise of the role of law in society. But we have seen a tear in that in recent times. Law is an instrument of social change, and we have been living now in a regime that has been breaking these laws and sort of throwing social norms into a loop and changing it in a manner that is unlike how law changes over time. Law changes over time by the consent of the people and through who we elect, thereby letting our priorities be known. But what is happening now in society is that Donald Trump's breaking of the law is becoming a sort of instrument of chaos that is spinning our society and changing our society in such a pace that the law cannot keep up with it, that the courts cannot keep up with it. It may also be deliberate because SCOTUS has the power of being quick if it wants to be, and it is not being quick. So there are questions of impropriety in the application of the law when it comes to the Supreme Court, which begs for judicial reform in our country. So these are a few things that I wanted to talk about. And I want you to think about law as something that exists as part of society. Without it, there are other options like lawlessness that is far more destructive to the bigger picture and to personal well-being. And therefore, it is critical for us to remain within the bounds of the law, not just for us, but also for our children, also for our legacy, also for our history, for our customs, for our traditions. Adherence to the law is critical to be a part of that American society that has been building for the last 250 years. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon.